the recording. Okay, here we go again. Okay, so, and welcome again. So I do hope you're seeing the screen. And for those of you who are not here, welcome to the recording. And I'm really delighted you're here, partly because my aim is to not only share what I know about being healthy and how to find good balance and find good health, but also selfishly for me, because I'm going to be doing this, and I normally do this in India, surrounded by a lot of support. And so I thought it's a lot more inspiring and a lot more motivating to do this with a bunch of other people who might share the same kind of goals. And so it's a win-win, really. So I'm super happy that you're here, even if you're just listening into the recording for information. I think you can find some information that will help you one way or the other. So this is, of course, aiming towards the 28-day guided Ayurvedic home cleanse. And so the idea is that you will be continuing more or less with your normal life while we do this. But there will be certain things that you'll want to slow down or change, and we'll look at that more closely as we go through this presentation. So let's have a look at a number of questions, and we'll find those answers in the presentation. The first one is, why are you here? So if you just take a moment to reflect on what is motivating you to come here, to spend your evening, first of all, here, and also even to consider doing something like a detox or an Ayurvedic cleanse. So that could be in the line of, curiosity or symptoms or whatever it is. So just listen to your own reasoning, what it is that brought you here. And just kind of hold that while we're doing the presentation to see what you might find in terms of your own situation. And then we're going to look at why I'm here, because I just want to share with you a little bit about why I would even do something like this. And then you'll find the answer to the question, why should we do a regular cleanse? What's the purpose behind that? And especially why 4 long weeks? Because many other cleanses have different time frames, and I want to explain why I've chosen a full month. And then what can you expect after 1 month? Obviously, depending on your personal goals and your situation. And then what does it cost? Obviously, the nuts and bolts will be right at the end, and I will explain all of those details before we finish up. Right, my dog has, of course, come alive just as I'm beginning this presentation. So if you're hearing funny sounds, that's Meta. So let's have a look at why you might be here. Maybe it's because you want to find out how to resolve a health problem. There might be something you already know that you want to deal with or that you're trying to work with, and whether or not that be independent of Western medical treatment, it is still beneficial, because you can absolutely blend Ayurvedic treatments and Ayurvedic principles with any other type of treatment that you might be getting from your allopathic doctor. And you maybe don't feel so great, even though you think you're kind of doing everything right. It's like, why don't I feel good if I'm doing all the good things? I'm ticking all the boxes. I'm doing the yoga. I'm eating organic and all of these things, and still something's off. And you're healthy, but then there's this one thing. There's this thing that just won't go away, or this thing that recurs all the time. Maybe you want to maintain your good health and to prevent disease. This would be, of course, the ideal situation, because we want to go forward in life, increasing our health over time, as opposed to trying to sort of put out fires all the time. So as we maintain our good health by doing these regular cleanses, we just keep upping our game, and the process of aging becomes much more graceful. And you might want to help a loved one to improve their health. Maybe it's not really specifically for you, but it may be for somebody else. And perhaps you're just curious, or all of the above, or you just want to know a little bit about how an Ayurvedic detox works. What are the protocols, and what kinds of things would we be doing? So I'm not going to get too specific in that today, because it's this is more just to see if this is something that's good for you or useful for you. We're not going to get into the specifics, because also the specifics are specific to each participant. That's one of the hallmarks of Ayurveda, is that we don't do anything as a general rule. Of course, there are basic foundational principles that everyone will follow, but each person will be doing their own unique version of the protocol within the 1 month program, depending on your goals and your health. And maybe you were just told to be here. Maybe you were sent here by somebody who loves you. And that's also a really good reason, because somebody's looking out for you. And if that's the case, most welcome. And then why am I here? So I can honestly say that it's because I have, thanks to Ayurveda, resolved so many health problems in the past 25 years. When I was in my 20s, I had terrible food intolerances. I had welts. I had skin rashes that would emerge on my neck and in the inner arm. I was dealing with chronic fatigue. I've had that in waves in different stages of my life from different reasons, sometimes post-operatively, sometimes it's just been lifestyle, and then chronic poor digestion at different stages of life as well. Um, and I was also one of those people who was not feeling great, even though I was doing everything right. And so really, in the past sort of 5 or 6 years, I have found my cruising speed, where even before that, even though I understood Ayurvedic principles, and even though I was doing yoga and all of those other things, there was always still something that I wasn't fully understanding until I really got into the deeper practices of Ayurveda, really shedding a lot of bad habits that were undermining my health, and genuinely living according to my constitution, and being able to confidently say no to certain things that would undermine my health, and realizing that actually I wasn't missing them anyway, whether it be social events or food or whatever. So this was a learning process over nearly 15, 20 years before, over the past decade, I've really figured out what's good for me. And now I know when things are off, I know exactly why. So my health is really good. I'm very, very happy to have good health. I very rarely get ill. It's been years since I've had a cold. But there's always this one annoying thing. And I'm a very Vata type person, and I'm 55. I'm getting older, and therefore more and more Vata. And therefore, there's often a dryness that comes up, especially in the winter. Right now, this season ending the winter is still quite a dry season. And so issues around digestion, constipation, dry skin, and so on come up for me. And so there's always that thing. And so I'm always rebalancing, always tweaking, because I know that the balance is possible. It's just that there's something that is changing in my environment. And so Ayurveda, as a result, helps me to maintain good health and prevent disease. I'm in excellent health. I have never taken any medication aside from post-operatively antibiotics and the occasional painkiller, especially after I broke my hip and had an accident that caused several sequential falls, and I did briefly take some painkillers, which helped, but I don't need them. And that's one of the great things about Ayurveda, is that you you train your body to naturally find its healing, and so that you don't numb things, you don't numb pain, and you don't numb personal, emotional issues, or whatever. You let the body process it. I've definitely helped my family and my kids and friends to improve their own health with great success. Sometimes with even the most simple, basic things, to tell people just one or two things that will really help them feel much better. Because some people are not ready for making a huge change, and that's just the way it is. So, and of course, the reason I'm here fundamentally is because I understand how Ayurveda detox protocols work, and I've done it many, many times. I've been to Panchakarma and Rasayana. I'll explain what those mean in a moment. usually annually and sometimes twice a year over the last 12 years, maybe 13 years now, except for last year, unfortunately. I'm still hoping to go this year. Um, and so I know how that works. I've also done it on my own at home in shorter versions. And so that's why I'm here, because I have some things that I'd like to share. I'd like to let you know how things work. So let's just do a really quick recap of some of the basic ideas or the meanings of things. So Ayurveda means knowledge of life. Many of you already know that. Ayur means life. Veda, it's one way of describing it is knowledge. And it's a complete mind-body system that involves all of our environment, including our relationships and our food and the air we breathe and the type of work we do and what it is that we're here for, our personal goals, you could call that, or you could call that dharma as well. Our dharma is also something that we need to keep in mind when we're thinking about what we want in life. And Ayurveda recognizes three basic types of constitution. So those aspects are reflected in our imbalances, but there's a fundamental way that we are. We came into this world with, let's say, a little bit of vata, maybe a little bit more pitta, and a little bit less kapha. And so this vata, pitta, kapha is not only what makes us who we are, but it's also the thing that will go in and out of balance, those elements. Vata, remember, is air. I'm not going to go through the whole of that description. For the information for this evening, I attached the webinar that I did last November as a fundraiser, and it's super complete. And I've got timestamps for all the different bits of information that's in that. It's like a 2.5-hour webinar. So all of these details are in there if you're not familiar with these things, but I think many of you already are. So just basically, Vata is all about movement, air, everything that allows the central nervous system to function, everything that allows movement out of the body, meaning elimination, all the vayus, the movement of energy moving through and out and within the body. It's all controlled by Vata. Pitta is fire, the element of fire, and Kapha is earth and water. And so that interplay between these five elements. So Pitta is Vata rather is air and ether, so space as well as air. So that Vata is air, ether, and Pitta is fire, and Kapha is water and earth. And those five elements are constantly in a state of balancing and rebalancing in our bodies and in our mind as well. That applies to the way that we think. So most people have a predominance of two of the three, but there's always three. And then more rarely, you might have somebody who's what we call tridoshic, and then that will be an equal measure of all three of those. And then let's say for my example, I am a Pitta Vata with a bit of Kapha. So the way the Dr. Ladd teaches it is there's a value up to 3, and you will be scored on those 3. So I'm a Pitta 3, Vata 2, Kapha 1. And so that's how I have to balance out my food and my daily habits. And where I'm out of balance, I need to keep checking in with those different qualities that I have. Primarily, you go right back to the constitution to see what it is that you're trying to balance towards. So it gives us a kind of a baseline to work with. So so here, why should we do a regular cleanse? This is really a key question. Ayurveda, by the way, I want to really emphasize that we can be a bit playful with language. Some people call a cleanse panchakarma, but what we're going to be doing is not, strictly speaking, panchakarma. Panchakarma means 5 actions. Panch is 5 and karma means actions. And those 5 actions are vamana, so vomiting, purgation. That's what some people will be doing that, and I will show you how to do that safely. And the other is Virichan, which is purging from the lower extremities. So you're going to be taking some kind of bowel laxative and purging over the space of a day. Again, not everybody. Another one is Basti, which is an enema, either depending what your type is, it would be either an oil-based or ghee-based enema or water with medication. But again, we'll look at all of these things. For some of you, that's absolutely not necessary. And again, depends on the symptoms that you're wanting to improve or what the presenting issue is. And then we also have in that Nasya, which is where we'll do medicated drops. This is something that I think everybody would benefit from. And so we'll be doing that. We can even make our own medicated drops. And I will show you how, and otherwise you can order them easily online. I have never seen that here for sale, in Belgium at least. So I, of course, because I go to India so often, I would buy things there. And so I never really gave it much thought here, but we can maybe see if we can find it here too. And those drops you put in deep into the nasal cavity, and that is about not just clearing the sinus, that's one of the more gross benefits, the sort of the more obvious benefits, but it's especially for the brain. It's especially for nourishing the brain and for clearing the mind. So Nasya is a really helpful part of the treatment. And then we're not going to be doing all of those things. Some people will be doing some of them, but then the final treatment is blood leeches. So that's very rare these days, that in the full Panchakarma contains also leaching blood done in a special way. That's only for people who are really ill or who have real excess pitta. So if there's a real problem of heat, that you would obviously do in an Ayurvedic clinic. We're certainly not going to be doing that here. And but just so you know, that is a panchakarma. That is the whole treatment. And what we're going to be doing is parts of that, following the principles of the cleanse, and certainly following the stages. So the reason that we need to do these cleanses is because we live in these really stressful times. We live in a world where it's difficult to get good nourishment. It's difficult to get good rest. Our stress is really high. And the way that we live our life produces a lot of imbalance. And so we're also surrounded by people who are not really motivated by their health. They don't really know how to be healthy. Or it just doesn't even occur to them that they're unhealthy. In fact, many people think that the way that they live their life is totally normal. And it's only when you step back and see that there's a different way that you can actually see how abnormal it is. And so we need to take a break once or twice a year. Ayurveda suggests that you do on a regular basis what is called rasayana. Rasayana annually, for example, or biannually if possible, or rather semi-annually, meaning twice a year, is about rejuvenation. It's about rebuilding. And for example, Emma would be doing more rasayana, because when a person is breastfeeding or relatively healthy and just wanting to tweak a few things, then a full detox is absolutely not necessary. It's more about reconstituting oneself. It's more about building up energy, building up our resources, because we can very quickly become depleted, like our little bunny friend here. And so the rasayana is very beneficial. We will all be doing a week at the end of rasayana to emerge back into our everyday life. So we will be doing a variation, as I said, unique to the individual, of whatever the person's needs are, between the extreme of a full detox and a rasayana, which is detox, meaning really taking things out of the body and eliminating, and especially if weight loss is one of the goals, then restricting intake of food and so on, and then going to the opposite end, which is about building up tissue and building up energy. So according to Ayurveda, there are three main causes of disease. The first one is known as Prajna Parada, which is one of my favorite concepts. It's often translated as crimes against wisdom. So when you're going against what is known to be, right, what the tradition says, and going against common sense, most of the time you're going to end up in some kind of trouble. That can be something like, eating in the middle of the night, snacking throughout the day. Not passing gas when you need to. That causes a real imbalance in vata, for example. Our culture has trained us to be polite in a certain way, and there's certain things that we just don't want to do. And so we suppress, or even suppressing going to the toilet, which is again going to cause a disruption in the vayus, meaning that apan vayu, which normally allows things to move down and out of the body, is going to be disturbed, and that's now going to push the energy upwards into the upper channels. And the next one is an unwholesome or unhealthy relationship of your senses, whether that's your eyes taking in too much information, too much news, too much online stuff, or just too much awake time and the eyes are never really relaxed. Or it can be, with regards to food. So sensory overload, including food, overeating, over drinking, too much sex, too much shopping, all those, whatever you can consume basically is in this category, and it will eventually lead to disease. And the last one is an improper or no adaptation, none at all, to seasonal changes. When regardless of where you live, there are changes. So even if you live near the equator, there are subtle changes throughout the year, and there's certain things that need to be adapted. It'll be going from dry season to rainy season, for example, or it'll be the cool season and then the hot season, or even in northern climates, it will be winter, like a real solid few months of real dark and cold weather. And then the weather becomes quite sunny and warm shortly after that. And when you don't adapt, meaning you're not adapting your sleep schedule, or you're not adapting the amount of work you do, or you're not adapting your diet, especially the diet, this causes problems because your body is out of whack. It's not any longer going to be in line with what is actually happening around you. And remember, Ayurveda is about harmonizing our bodies with the environment around us. So it's our little everyday choices, those little tiny things that we do all day long, every day, that throw us off balance. So it's like, when you're not able to eat a regular meal, or you're staying up late because there's something that you want to do, and you forget almost to go to bed because you're so excited by what's going on. These things throw us off, and so they accumulate, and this is the problem. And when these imbalances accumulate, we get what Ayurveda calls ama. And ama is, it literally means a near poison. So ama is, the meaning of the word means a near poison, or almost a poison, because it is a toxin in the body. And it is a substance that causes disruption in the cells. Think of it as a kind of a gooey sludge that slows information exchanges through the cells, or that disrupts movement of energy through the body. In Western scientific or medical parlance, it would be the idea of inflammation. So ama would almost translate as chronic inflammation. And now the medical understanding now is that inflammation is at the root of like 70% of all diseases. And that includes, everything from cancer to diabetes to chronic pain, all sorts of things, Alzheimer's, all of these diseases, which appear to be completely separate and random, things happening to the body, are fundamentally caused by inflammation, which in Ayurvedic terms we're calling ama. So this ama is whatever is left undigested and unprocessed by the body. And it has nowhere to go because the body is not getting the right information. The stomach can't process it, and neither can the liver, and then neither can the kidneys or the bladder. And so it ends up being kind of stuck. There's a kind of a backup of too much, perhaps food, or too much stress, too much cortisol that disrupts the hormonal flow due to chronic stress, for example. And so this ama comes from whatever we consume, whatever we take in. And that can be our food, what we're drinking, what we're eating, or it can be thinking. It can be too much emotion, too much information. Obviously, the inputs, like that poor little bunny, overworked, exhausted, and completely out of his element. It becomes too much and we can't any longer cope with it physically, and it slowly turns into some form of disease. So the body is made up, in the Ayurvedic way of looking at things, it's made up of what are called shrotas, or channels, if you like. A shrota is the different passageways for energy to move around the body, different ways for the organs to communicate with each other. For example, the liver clears the blood, it purifies the blood, and it recirculates the blood and sends it back to the heart. And so if that's not possible, if that work is not possible for the liver is overwhelmed and clogged itself, then the blood that moves back to the heart is also going to be congested. And that creates problems with the arteries. And so you get blocked arteries. And so what leads to a heart attack is not the heart. The heart's done nothing wrong. It's that the liver is overwhelmed and the ama has backed up all the way through the digestive system. And the liver is just one element on that chain. And so this is why it's so important to clear out these channels. And this is what a detox is doing. This is what this process of stepping back and slowing down and consuming less and eating very simply and eating very sensibly is doing to our health. Simple things that we wouldn't have thought were really problematic, like eating while standing creates ama. Eating too fast, if you're gobbling down your food and you don't chew it, the body can't function like that. The body starts digestion in the mouth. And this is a very important part of digesting, the number of chews and the liquefying the food and allowing the saliva to mingle with the food already creates the enzymes necessary then for the stomach to take over and churn the food through the process of combustion and metabolizing whatever it is that you're eating. And the Indians have this saying, which is that death looks over your shoulder if you eat standing up. And that, I remember when I first heard that, I thought, that's pretty extreme. Like that's quite a strong statement. And I thought it was one of those kind of radical grandma things that people would say. And then actually, upon further examination, it's very clear that that is enough to kill somebody. Somebody has a heart attack and stroke, and you trace the steps backwards and you observe how they live their life. And you find that a lot of these otherwise innocent things that people are doing are building up to a bigger problem. So obviously not sleeping well and stress and so on. So you see where the problem lies here. This ama is a really big problem for our overall health, and we need to clear the body of ama. And while we go through the cleanse, we will be looking for really specific symptoms of ama. So some of them are like creaky joints, pain in the joints, a coated tongue, white film or colored film on the tongue. A lot of mucus reflects too much ama, bloating when you eat, things like that. There's a lot of different things, and we'll be looking really specifically at that, so you can be really clear where you are on that line. So Ayurveda says that if the diet is wrong, medicine is useless, and if the diet is right, medicine is unnecessary. And so this is really the principle to live by, that you really have what you need already to be well. It's a question of the judicious use of the food and how you eat, the time, how you prepare the food, what time of year you're eating, and also even where you're eating. What country are you in while you're eating that food? What climate are you in? And is that adapted to your climate? So let's have a look at how Ayurveda sees illness, because it's very profound compared to how Western medicine sees illness. It goes right to the root cause of illness. And this is why when an acharya is reading your palm, when you read the pulse of a person, you can feel imbalance coming from a very early stage. And as you feel the imbalance in the pulse, I think I may have said palm, I mean pulse. So when you feel that imbalance, you already know where in the body things are not working. And so you can correct that really quickly and stop things from getting worse. And you can see where perhaps even the root cause of the illness is coming from. The first stage of illness is called accumulation. And this is really the earliest imbalance. So this is where you want to be. We develop, and over this month together, we would develop this sensitivity, this instinct about how is my body today? Am I digesting? Did I digest what I just ate? Should I eat more of that? Or is this, maybe I shouldn't eat that ever again? And that sensitivity, that kind of instinctive relationship that you develop with food, helps you to detect those earliest stages of imbalance. This is, I think, one of the reasons why I haven't had a cold for years, because at the first sign that I'm getting really tired, or that I'm just not performing well, like I don't feel well, I immediately take action. That means that I reduce my amount of food, I rest more, I go to bed really early. I'll take some essential oils or herbs or a hot bath or whatever it is that I feel like I need to immediately improve my situation. And virtually the next day, usually the next day, I don't have those same symptoms because I've immediately jumped on it, as it were. Whereas 20 years ago, and certainly when I was much younger, I would have just kept going. I would have gone out. I would have done the thing, whatever the thing was that I was supposed to do. Where now I'm like, I have no shame or embarrassment saying, I need to have a night in. I'm sorry. I mean, obviously, unless it's a specific important commitment, but I really am attentive to the schedule that I need to keep so that I can find these imbalances very quickly, rectify them, and then keep moving towards good health. So this first stage of imbalance always happens because of poor digestion. This, without exception, this will always be the reason that there is an imbalance. The principle is that all illness begins in Vata dosha. Vata dosha is the first one to go off balance, and Vata dosha is the colon. And usually what happens is then we're not eliminating properly for whatever reason. Or the bacteria that we need, the friendly bacteria, the microbiome, is not functioning well for us. And if it's off balance, then this will lead to problems later on. The home of Vata, the domain or the seat of Vata, is the colon, or the large intestine, if you like. And so Vata accumulates in the colon first. That's the first place that you're going to see problems. And then the home of Pitta is in the intestines and the liver. And so that heat will come through the process of mulching and extracting the nourishment from the food. And that fire element in the liver can throw the liver off as well. And then the home of Kapha is in the stomach. Obviously, there are other parts, but in terms of specifically of the digestive system, the first place that Kapha will show up in terms of imbalance will be the stomach. But it's that reverse process. So it's that process of Vata accumulating in the colon. Let's give the example of digestion that's not working well. The Vata accumulates, you're not eliminating, then the colon is backed up. And so the stool isn't passing. Pitta is then thrown off in the intestines because nothing is moving quickly enough. So it either heats up or shuts down, depending. And as a result, kapha then starts to accumulate in the stomach, because now there's no food passing from the stomach into the colon. And in fact, there's too much food, residual food in the stomach, and that kills the digestive fire. And as a result, there's nothing being digested. There's no combustion, and there's therefore no metabolizing. The second stage is aggravation. So this is also called provocation. So when the disease is now starting to be, or the problem is now starting to be aggravated, and things get worse when those accumulations, like I've just mentioned, those minor imbalances are ignored. So now we're getting into, yeah, I don't feel so great, but I'm going to keep going in this direction. But you keep getting more of it. Now you're getting more symptoms, worse symptoms, more strong messages. And so that dosha imbalance will increase until it's stopped and rebalanced, and unless, because it doesn't necessarily mean that somebody will stop it and address it. So perhaps they won't. And that continues then into phase 3. And then the third stage then of illness is the spread. Now the doshas are spreading because they've been ignored. They're accumulating so much where they are normally that they have no more room, literally this kind of need for that energy to be shared out or spread out in the body. Now they start to find other places where they can lodge this. And again, we're thinking of ama here, because this is, for example, undigested food that's leaking back from the gut into the bloodstream, or indigestion, reflux coming up into the digestive tube from the stomach, for example. So it's moving in the wrong direction into the wrong place. And now we're getting a problem. Now we're getting something that you more or less start to notice. And so let's give the example, like a little bit like I gave earlier. So vata dosha building up in the colon, backing everything up, is leading to this kind of chronic constipation. And then that causes low back pain. So by the time we get low back pain, we've already had 2 stages of illness before. It's very rare that low back pain is caused by muscles. It's very rare that low back pain is caused by some kind of a muscular problem. It is most often because the energy is low or it's off balance, and that affects the kidney energy, and that affects the adrenals, which is in the domain of vata, and then of course the digestion. Now, as an aside, not an important aside, this is the phase where detoxing becomes necessary, and it gives fast results. So while you're still at this phase, you see the problem, you can feel what's going off. And at this point, if we put the brakes on, we can say, okay, we can backtrack relatively quickly within a couple of weeks, and in some cases just days, and get back to where you need to be. So this is where you want the ultimate place to stop. It doesn't mean you have to get to this phase to detox. You can still go through the process of purification and fasting and so on in the first and second phases, simply as a kind of an annual or a regular routine. And the more that you do it, obviously, the less you will have difficulties with things accumulating. So then if let's say we didn't do anything about that up until this point, now we get to stage 4 in illness, and that's called infiltration. And as Dr. Ladd would say, oh my, symptoms then become localized as the accumulated doshas move into place, or into spots and parts of the body where ama or toxins have accumulated, or there's weakness in the body. That weakness can be due to an old injury, for example, or it can be due to an operation, a recent operation, or something like that. And so those symptoms start to pester other parts of the body, but then they'll stick there, they'll kind of hang around, and then the problems start to become regular. Now I have, like you'll have somebody saying, oh, my shoulder hurts again. It's like, this is my shoulder hurting. It's always been like this for years and years. And we're at this stage then when you have that localized kind of sensitivity. And because these things happen gradually over time, sadly, a lot of people think that all of these kinds of sensations, these aches and pains, or indigestion or brain fog or whatever, are a normal part of life and aging, and it's absolutely not normal. So again, a reason to really sit back and think, well, at what point am I willing to allow myself to, to stay unwell and not be able to take charge of my health, to take care of my well-being. The fifth stage is the manifestation stage. So things start to get visible now. You can start to see that there's a problem in the body. Like if you've got a shoulder that hurts or a low back issue, then now you're not standing properly. And then that has another problem added to it. Or maybe there's a range of movement issue that you no longer have the same range of movement. And that can affect organs as well. And this is now at the stage where a Western medical specialist would notice. This is now the stage where a Western medical practitioner would say, okay, now you have a problem. Up until this point, they're still not seeing what you're describing as a real problem because it's not coming back in the blood test. It's not, everything's coming back normal. You should be fine, but you're not. And so here we get to the manifestation stage, but we're really far down the road by the time a doctor is seeing what they call an illness. So at this point, it's hard to reverse the imbalance. At this point, it's much more difficult to go back to good health. It's not impossible. That's important to remember. It's just going to take much more determination. It's going to take much more time. It could be months or years rather than a question of days or weeks, for example, by just stopping periodically and doing a cleanse. And then finally, in the last stage of disease, you have structural distortion. So there's really now something that is affecting the body as well as your quality of life. It's impossible to ignore at this stage. The illness becomes something that's almost like a daily preoccupation. And that's when you get serious illness. This is the Kapha stage, where we've passed through the Vata and Pitta stages of illness, and we're in the Kapha stage of illness, where now there is an actual physical gross body problem. And by this stage, that means that the doshas are so far off balance that a big intervention is necessary. That could be an operation or some heavy medication or some other treatment that may or may not bring good results. Again, it's possible to go backwards from here with a massive amount of support and determination and knowledge, because the person needs to be informed of why their body is the way it is, and that there's not this disease that happened to them. You get a lot of people talking about cancer sort of appearing in their body like out of the blue. And this is because they haven't been paying attention at all for the previous 4 or 5 stages of illness. So we definitely don't want to be there. We don't want our loved ones to be there. This is the drawing that Vasant Lad, Dr. Lad, made of this process. So just really briefly, if we look from the upper left side, you're seeing where, let's call the leak is like the problem, the issue that is starting in Vata dosha. That's in the colon. Things are not working the way that they should. And so things accumulate, and it's just small. It's just a little something that's very small. And then that's going to accumulate and move out of the realm of the colon. We call that leaky gut. You might have heard that expression. That's what Western medicine calls that. And that's ama. That's what is the particles that are actually now unable to be absorbed through the wall lining of the gut are actually breaking down the lining of the gut, and it's not able to repair itself because it's constantly full. And so then it becomes porous, and then that goes back into the bloodstream, where you see it spreading. That image is the heart. So it's spreading. And from that point, the spread is going systemically. It's going throughout the body, and it will accumulate, as we saw, in places that might be vulnerable. So here on the bottom right, you can see where, for example, it's accumulating in the joint. And so that's where the bones start to get affected. That's where people start to have deterioration of mobility or comfort. They get chronic pain, inflammation, and so on. And it starts to destroy the tissue to the point that the bones become very brittle or vulnerable. And all of this can be prevented if we just close that leaking tap or come back to it and say, well, maybe I just need to no longer add any more to the problem, and I can step back for a bit. So as a solution to all of that, Ayurveda suggests seasonal, which is Ritu Charya. Ritu is a season, and Charya is like a mastery or a technique of something. And daily, or Dina Charya, Dina is the day, routines. So these routines are there as a way of structuring our health. As we structure our habits and our health, we can manage it. We know exactly what we need to do, and we're not sort of like grasping at straws or doing this and then taking that supplement and trying this technique or trying that diet, that fad fitness thing, or that new thing that is coming around. All of which is coming with good intentions, but not really helpful in the long run. And so, so Ayurveda is very much in favor of being structured, and in particular because this really helps Vata dosha. Vata dosha benefits from structure and stability. So the more we can stabilize, and this is why when we do this 1 month together, the idea is that we're creating a framework, we're creating a structure, we're stabilizing ourselves, having a specific container for each week and the days within the week, knowing what is necessary, what should be done. And that gives an incredible peace of mind. And so as much as people think that they want to have all kinds of freedom, actually it's very comforting to be told what to do. So this is what everyday good health can look like. So a regular bowel movement and good digestion. That's the baseline. That's the number one thing that you need for good health. Regular meaning usually twice a day. So could be 3 times a day. It depends on how often you eat or how much you eat. But ideally twice a day, you should be evacuating your bowels. And that good digestion will have you feeling lighter, more energetic, with clear eyes, good skin. And that just brings a certain ojas. It brings ojas is like life force. It's like a quality of pitta that brings sparkle. It brings an energy. And also health for Ayurveda is not just physical, it's also having a good sense of self, meaning you have a self-awareness, you have an intuition, an instinct of what's right for yourself. You have discernment, you have a quality of a capacity to choose, a capacity to decide things that is very clear, and that intuition that guides you not just in your life, but in your food choices and how you take care of your body. You feel good about yourself. You like yourself. That's also healthy. That's good health. So you can't be in good health if you don't like yourself. Then there's this kind of split between who you think you are and who you feel yourself to be. We see that. You can see that especially these days with a lot of social media pressure to look good. And so you have a lot of people who are super, focused on their, I don't know, their posture or, their yoga postures or their physical appearance to the point that they do plastic surgery or whatever. They're so focused on all of that because fundamentally they don't like themselves. And that's not health. That's having a nice body. That doesn't go beyond that. And then finally, fundamentally a necessary aspect of good health is to feel content, to feel santosha, to feel healthy, happy, vibrant, clear, and independent, of whatever's going on in your life. You're happy just because you're happy, even when things are not great. You can have moods. It's not to say that you wouldn't have an up or down mood. It doesn't mean that you don't get angry or whatever, but your baseline is that you're happy. Your baseline is life is good. And this is what good health is from the Ayurvedic point of view. So a daily routine would look like something when you first wake up that includes good personal hygiene. That's brushing your teeth. Your digestion begins with oral hygiene. So how you brush your teeth. When we do this month together, we're going to focus on every morning scraping the tongue, using oil pulling with coconut oil. I also happen to add peppermint essential oil to it because I prefer the taste. You don't need that at all, but you can make your own. It's very easy, very inexpensive. What we're going to be doing in this protocol is extremely inexpensive, and 99% of what we need is coming from our kitchen cupboard or from the grocery store down the road. So these are going to be part of the daily routine. And so that good personal hygiene also contributes to you feeling good about yourself. So cleaning, the first thing you do, cleaning yourself, cleaning your face, having a shower, washing your teeth, and taking care of your eyes and whatever other parts of your hygiene, dry brushing we're going to be doing as well, oiling the body. Moderate exercise every day, ideally in the morning. That's the best time. Moderate exercise can look like walking, for example. Again, there's no need for any expenditure. Walking, we're going to be doing yoga together. So each week we'll have a different yoga class. And I will tell each individuals which part to emphasize according to what your aim is or what your constitution is. But each of the practices are dosha balancing. And so we'll do certain practices for each of the three doshas that balance them out. So that will be as a kind of a baseline practice. And then you can add to that whatever you need more of. If you need more grounding and calming, then you do more that will bring you that benefit. And I'll show you how to do that. Obviously, your healthy diet, so how you eat, we're going to be looking at all of these different aspects of food, not just the food itself, what you're actually eating, but the timing of your food. It's extremely important for Ayurveda, what the timing of your food is. And particularly with regards to the month that we have, the timing will change from the first week to the second week, the third and fourth, and so on. The timing of eating will shift. Because we're moving towards different goals each week. We're moving towards something different and then back towards the baseline again. And then, of course, efficient elimination of waste. So one of the things that we must pay a lot of attention to throughout the rest of our life is how we eliminate what we eat, whatever we consume. That includes your food, of course, your food waste, but it's also how do I shake off the over stimulation? How can I get rid of all of this input, the extra stimulation? I personally, for example, have spent a lot less time on social media. I cut back on Facebook back in September last year or August last year. I don't even remember, last summer sometime. And I don't miss it at all, actually. And the only reason I go back is because there's certain people I really need to keep in touch with, or courses that I'm following that include a Facebook group. But otherwise, these things are unhealthy. They're not helping us at all. They just add to the noise in my life. And so there are certain things, when we talk about elimination of waste, we're going to be looking at that as well. How do I, during my day, cut back on these things that are not good for me? And then, of course, cultivating a positive mental outlook. That can be through meditation. It can be through reading scripture or reading books that are uplifting, listening to lectures of people who you enjoy, or just spending time with people who uplift you. So as the seasons change, so should our behavior. Our diet, our sleep habits, and our work routine should adjust to the energy of the season. This is a given. And so that's also something that you will explore as you go through this month. You'll start to notice how the diet needs to be different in the spring compared to the winter, for example, and then going forward into the summer. So let's have a look at why 4 weeks rather than just one, for example. There's several programs that are offered. Dr. Ladd himself offers a program. His program is, how long is his program? I think it's 10 days. It's not very long, actually. It's 10 days long, 10 or 12 days. And then there's another program you can do 1 week, and then another one that's 2 weeks. You have 3 weeks. There's a whole bunch of different ones. but I don't see people doing a longer one. And so for me, the 4th week is really important, because the 4th week is the re-emergence back into your life. And what happens is, in the 3 weeks that you do the real focus on the detoxing and on the slimming down of, you know, whatever you're getting rid of, that's the easy part. Believe it or not, that's the easy part. It's like, it's so obvious what you're doing. You're getting rid of this and getting rid of that. And then the problem is, when I need to select what I bring back into my life, if we make choices that undermine all the good work that we've done, we can end up kind of throwing off the process. And so, for example, your first meals are really important after you've been fasting or after you've been cutting back on food. So although it's better than nothing to do a week or two, you can't really accomplish a lot. And it takes a lot longer for your digestion, and also for you as a person, to find a new way of being, a new balance. It's like a week will be refreshing. And that's certainly great. If you're in great health, it's probably all you need to do on a regular basis. I often do like a 3-day or a 5-day mono diet, or even like I will only eat fruit in September, for example, or I will, meaning grapes usually, or I'll do a khichdi diet. We'll be doing that during this month. And that's fine, because you're doing it as a kind of a regular thing where you're regularly rebalancing just to keep things steady. But if you're really trying to work towards a new level of health, you really want to take a longer time. And we're not just, it's not only about detoxing, that's one of the things, but it's about rebuilding a new way of living. So it's rebuilding habits, it's learning things. It's not something you can kind of understand in a couple of days or a week. And this is something that you'll be able to share with the people around you, so that you can contribute to your friends or your family's well-being. So with the principles that you understand, the principles, you can apply them to other situations and other people. You know, in terms of the detoxing, some people, like I live like a nun, basically. I very rarely drink. I have coffee periodically, when, especially if I'm traveling, although that's not happening. But you know, if I'm just really tired or I just want a real jolt, it's great for creativity, for example. But that might be like twice a month or once a month. Same for drinking. If I have a glass of wine, it's because I'm celebrating a friend's birthday, or I'm going out for a very rare dinner or something. Otherwise, I don't have a life that creates a lot of toxicity. I eat really well and so on. And yet, there are toxins all around us. There's toxins in the water. In 2013, 2014, in the middle of my burnout, one of the complications of my burnout was that I started to get mercury poisoning. I had 6 amalgam fillings that I had to take out. It immediately helped me feel better. Within a week, I was in a completely different place. But the toxins are everywhere. And, you know, if you eat fish, for example, that fish will be so full of plastic that you are now directly ingesting plastic. It's said that every single week, the average person consumes a credit card size piece of plastic or amount of plastic. That's huge. That may not be the case for somebody, for example, like me, who's really careful about not using plastic. I don't cook with plastic, or I don't have a microwave or whatever. I try not to use plastic bottles for anything. I don't eat fish, don't eat meat. So there's a lot of things that really don't apply, but I know for sure that some way or another, I'm getting all of this toxicity. And then of course you can multiply that by a factor of whatever. If you drink water out of plastic bottles, if you eat fish, if you consume packaged foods that you heat in the microwave, or that you purchase food that is sold in plastic, for example, all of that is in your body. It's all coming back in your body. And so even when we try our best, and this is what I meant in the beginning about like thinking I was doing everything right, and still finding that there were things that were just beyond me. I had really no idea how difficult it was to detoxify, for example, from the fillings that I'd had, the dental fillings, and I'd had those damn things my whole life since I was a young child. I in fact originally had 8. I had 2 that fell out and they were replaced. And when I replaced the other 6, I replaced them with porcelain just to have the most neutral thing in my mouth. But even still, who knows? So we're doing our best, but we're working. This is like an uphill climb. So we're working against an environment which is highly, highly toxic. This, I have to say, is one of the other reasons why I'm so enthusiastic about living in this more Ayurvedic way, because it always factors in the way that we are in relationship to the environment and how what we eat, the choices that we make, and so on influence the environment around us. So it's a two-way street. So over all these years of accumulation of toxins and stresses and so on, these emotions and toxins are stored in our body's fatty tissues. And notice that the brain is mostly fat. So this is an important thing. This is especially with regards to things like Alzheimer's, people who are frustrated even by simple memory, short-term memory loss or brain fog. The brain is mostly fat. And so when toxins accumulate in fat, that's a big concern. And younger children are already having this problem. The toxicity of mother's milk has already been known since long before when I was breastfeeding, and that was over 20 years ago. So it's far better to take a longer period. These 4 weeks is to give us the time. So we take our time to eliminate all these different things that we need to eliminate, to simplify, pare down the things that we want to change, and then add in the healthy new habits. And we're going to spend really the essence of the first week is that. How do we change in the course of the day? How do we modify how we eat, when we eat, doing the daily habits and so on. And by about day 4, day 5, we're going to start to change actually the food. We're starting to introduce now the more simple foods that we're going to be relying on for most of the rest of the time. And when you detox in a sustainable way, then when the toxins are extracted, because remember I said that's the easy part, the toxins will be extracted. That happens really quickly. But what doesn't happen easily is to have them chelated or to have them absorbed by something that will take them out of the body. And that's why the extra time is really helpful, because that gives the body the time to eliminate the toxins. So what happens is you detox, you pull them out of one organ, and then they go into the excretory organs, perhaps like in the colon or something. And then they stay there and they're like, okay, now what? And then they just go right back in the system. And so you end up with this kind of circuit. So you feel better for a week or two, then a little bit less good, and then slowly you kind of feel just like you did before, because the toxins haven't gone anywhere. They're just kind of recycling themselves now. So slow is always better, and far better to do a few small but very committed changes over a longer period of time than a major intensive change for 5 or 6 days and then go right back into your normal routine. So fundamentally, it's all about Agni. It's all about fire. Fire is such an important element in all of the Vedic sciences. Fire is everything that brings us life. It is the element that gives us the capacity to take nutrition from our food. It's the capacity to think. Agni is the first word of the very first Veda, the Rig Veda. The very first word is Agni, and so it's fundamental to understanding life itself. And so when our own Agni, meaning our digestive fire, is not good, and for most people it's not, then that has a knock-on effect on the rest of our health. And our digestive fire, in some cases, might be too high, might be too hot. And that's creating other complications, especially inflammation in the gut or in the joints. Or it might be too low, and then it's causing this kind of murkiness and this kind of heaviness and this feeling of sluggishness. So either way, this Agni is really vital, and we are going to be spending a lot of time over the whole month rekindling our fire. If we have like 25 logs on a fire, it's way too much fuel, and it'll put the fire out. So if you think about that, like your food is the fuel. If you're constantly eating, constantly adding things to your fire, it'll go out. It's just not possible to um, keep it alive under those conditions. So it's all about how you can digest your food, and that depends on the quantity of food, the frequency you eat with, how many meals a day do you snack. Never snack between meals if you can avoid it. The time of day that you eat, the freshness of your food, the way that you prepare it, and the attitude with which you eat. Not only the way you prepare your food, the attitude that you bring to that, but how you're eating your food. All of that is going to affect your digestion. And we're going to be looking at all of this. We're going to be working with mindful eating as well. This is part of that intuition, building intuition through mindfulness when you're going through the month with me. And so, yeah, I can't find my little cursor. There we go. So how's your digestion? Do you experience bloating or gas or constipation, or that's a vata condition, for example, or do you have diarrhea or cramping, that's pitta, or a sense of prolonged fullness after eating, even after a small amount of food? That's probably kapha that's accumulating. And do you have a feeling of sluggishness or brain fog or low energy, especially right after eating carbs and proteins or anything? At a certain point, it might be just anything that you eat, then you feel sluggish. That's a really bad sign. That's a sign that you absolutely must step back from eating for a while, that you need to take a break, that you have to put more time between meals or eat less at each meal. Be sure that you're feeling hungry when you eat. Most of the time when we eat, we're not hungry. And this is really problematic. So it's time for a fresh start. It's time for things to change. And that's why we're here. So this 28-day Ayurvedic home cleanse will bring noticeable changes to you. As I've pointed out, 28 days is a long time. The food that you've ingested today takes 30 days to complete its process through the cellular, what do you call that? The cellular digestion process. So on one level, it'll be processed within a couple of hours, on another level within a couple of days, on another level with a couple of weeks, and then finally at the deepest cellular level, after the 30th-ish day, your food that you've eaten today is no longer going to be a part of your body. But up until that point, it's whatever you're eating today still affects you 30 days from now. And that's why we want to go slow. We want to take our time. And we have this lunar month from new moon to new moon, where we're using that energy of the moon. We're using it's a really interesting energy for regeneration, restarting, the spring energy that's very motivating. That is also a support for what we're doing here. So it's not just the actual things that we're doing, but we're doing it according to a particular time scale that is, it's environmentally supporting us. So you're going to feel better health over the course of a month. And this is about graceful aging. It's about feeling like you're just as valid and healthy and vital as you were when you were maybe 25, 30 years old, when you're 55 or 60. And it's going to for sure change your mood. You will have a lot more space in your mind, a more kind of creative outlook, a different way of seeing things. Creativity skyrockets when you do fasting. This is why it's a part of every spiritual tradition. You have clarity of vision, you have clarity of ideas, clarity of discernment when you fast, when there's less going on to bog you down in digestion. And we're not necessarily talking about no eating fast. It's very rare in Ayurveda that there's absolutely no consuming of anything. But for some of you, and especially those of you who really want to go deep into the detox, or if you're looking to lose weight, then you can do 1 to 3 days, but we'll talk about that together. I would suggest just the one, but could be up to 3 days of just a water fast. Or you can fast with juice, for example, and no vegetables, no solids. So what most people will be doing a mono diet, even what we'll call a fast. What we're doing is a fast mimicking diet, meaning that we're taking so little. It's about in caloric terms 500 or 600 calories. It's not very much, but enough to keep the body, fed. But it actually has the biological effect of a fast. And so you get the benefits of the fast, even if you eat a little bit. This can be better for somebody who's not done a fast before or who feels uncomfortable not eating, because there will be that psychological barrier as well. We'll talk about that. Some people are quite freaked out at the idea of not eating. But it's like a religious experience. I can promise you, when you've gone through fasting, when I was younger, before I had children, I would fast for 5 or 7 days at a time, and I would literally bounce upstairs. I lived in a house that was like 5 stories tall, and I'd be just bouncing upstairs. And it was amazing even to me how much energy I had without consuming anything. I would have juice fasts for 5 days. Yeah, and so your skin will be clear, your eyes will be clear. When the eyes are clear, that's a sign that the liver is good, that your digestion is good. So that's a great indicator. If you look in the mirror and you see the eyes are grayish or reddish or yellowish, you know that your liver is not good. You need to step back from eating for a while. Your teeth will be whiter. The oil pulling really improves the quality of your gums and teeth, and you'll certainly shed excess water and fat. So you'll become more trim, more compact. You'll feel better. And especially, there are no supplements to buy. So I will give suggestions. None of it is necessary. It'll be extra for those who want to do things. Like, for example, if you want to purchase Triphala, these are not expensive things. Triphala or Brahmi or Ashwagandha or anything like that you might want extra. I'll point out where to get that and how, rather than, don't get these things in the health food stores here. They charge a crazy amount of money. It's 18 euro for like 60 capsules of product that should cost about that much for 500 grams. And so, yeah, definitely no need for extra expenses. On that note, just incidentally, you can buy turmeric capsules. Never take turmeric in capsules. It's not a good thing to do. It's way too overheating. It really overstimulates the liver. Turmeric, see, this is that kind of principle, like if you find something that works, you take lots of it. But Ayurveda, there's a way to take everything that will actually bring benefit, and then there's a way to take it that will actually do more harm. And so you can actually be doing quite a lot of harm by taking, say, turmeric capsules, or just randomly taking turmeric. You must always consume turmeric with fat, otherwise the liver can't process it. It's way too hot, way too much. Won't bring you any benefit. So things like that we'll look at together. There may be a few things that you might like to have, like you can scrape your tongue with your toothbrush. That's perfectly fine. Or you can just invest in a tongue scraper. They're really not expensive. I might even have 2 or 3. I used to sell them at the yoga studio. I think if I can find them, if I have 2 or 3 left, they're 5 euros each. They shouldn't be more than that. They're like, at the most, they're going to be like a couple, a few euros. I think you can probably find them in a health food store. I don't know, because I haven't looked. A neti pot. You can use a teapot instead of a neti pot. You don't need to buy one, but you might like to have one. And that's all you're going to need. So it's really about food. It's really about how we're eating, the timing of what we're eating, what we're not eating, and what we're consuming in terms of what we're doing with our day-to-day, activities. So this is what the program includes. It's both in week 1 and in the final week. We're going to have a 20-minute individual consultation separately online, so separate from the group. And so we're going to establish your goals and then review them and review the health questionnaire. I'm going to send you a very complete health questionnaire about a week before we start. So that'll be next week. And that's going to be looking at medical history, digestive problems, all the questions that I would need to ask, entirely confidential. And only for me to understand you and what you need for this program. So that's why we would do that, to help set the goals that you need to establish for the month. And then weekly instructions. So just like we are doing right now, we will have like a webinar, like an hour, usually an hour at a time, where there would be maybe sometimes maybe just popping on for half an hour or something, where there would be specific instructions. So, literally like how to how to do body brushing, how to scrape your tongue, how to do neti or nasya or whatever that we're going to be doing. So whatever we're doing, whatever we're building on going forward, I will show you. I'm even going to teach you things like how to make your own ghee and things like that. So you should prefer to make your own ghee rather than buy it. Ghee is definitely a thing that you should consider taking. If you're vegan, you can use coconut oil instead of ghee. Vegans tend to have a lot of trouble with vata. So unless you're a strict vegan, that we can work around. But if you have any flexibility there, I would prefer you to use ghee. There's a lot of medicinal benefits to ghee, specifically for the brain and the central nervous system. So I would obviously show you that as well, teach you those things. And then we would have a weekly yoga class, as I mentioned, to balance the doshas. We'll do that together online, and then it'll be recorded so you can repeat it then at home. And then a weekly Q&A so that we can just go over questions, because I'd rather do that in a kind of a package. People can learn from each other's questions rather than bouncing back and forth by email or something, which is still possible, but I prefer to do it in a collective, because we each learn from the other, and things come up that we didn't think about that actually might be relevant to our own situation. And then a private, Facebook page. It could be something else. There are other things that we can use besides Facebook. That will depend on the composition of the group and whether people actually want to use Facebook or not, but we'll find a way that we can interact outside of these sessions. And it's nice, Facebook provides the option also of doing recorded videos. So I can do Facebook Lives directly in the group. That means that you just have to log on to Facebook, go into the group, and you can watch the videos if you weren't able to be there live. So that is the one advantage. Alas, there are some advantages to Facebook. And then, of course, additional material. So there's going to be some background information and PDFs and small short teaching videos to show you how to do this and that, like things like the ghee and stuff like that. I'd probably do that as a smaller video rather than take up your time in a presentation like this. And then throughout the sessions, throughout the 4 weeks, we will have emails each day just to kind of keep us going, remind us why we're doing this damn thing. And so there's several phases to this. We begin, as I mentioned, at the new moon on April 12th. I am undecided as to whether our session should be during the day or during the evening. And that I'm going to decide when I get the composition of the group to see what the majority of the group is able to do. So April the 12th could be, for example, a morning session or an evening session, according, as per my availability. And our first session will be looking at that initial phase. What are we going to, what is the sort of lay of the land? What do we stop doing? How do we simplify? How do we structure this? What do I need to do going forward? And that will be, the first 3 days will be really more focused on that. And then we start to focus more on the actual food after day 4, because we can't change everything all at once. It's a little bit, it's a lot to take in all at once. So we'll have more success if we go gradually and we build on day by day. And then through week 1, we're slowly going to be introducing intermittent fasting. That means that if you're taking 3 meals plus snacks, you're going to start to go to 3 meals with no snacks. And if you're going from 3 meals, no snacks, maybe you'll go from 3 meals to 2 meals, or you'll squeeze those 3 meals into a shorter block of time. And we'll explain all the benefits of doing that as well. Intermittent fasting is very popular nowadays, but it's definitely been a traditional diet for yogis and for Ayurveda for many, many years. The idea of not eating for large blocks of time is just a given. And that I would have to say is in every traditional culture. It's only very recently that we're eating like pigs at the trough. And then, of course, we introduce mono dieting, and that will be explained as well, according to your needs. For example, if somebody's breastfeeding, you'll have a different nourishment requirement compared to somebody who might want to lose weight, for example. And then at the full moon, so 2 weeks in, there's the full moon. This is traditionally a time to to stop eating. A full moon is the traditional time to kind of take a break and fast. And even if you don't fast completely, you fast from grains, or you fast from sugar, or you fast from something. And so we will be doing a version of the fast for at least 3 days around the full moon. We build towards that fast, meaning we prepare the body to reduce until the fast, according to how you're going to take it. And then we go in the opposite direction. We build back up towards eating again after that pause. And so everyone will be doing their own variant of that. And then following that, we're going to reemerge into eating. The fourth week will be very much about that, getting back to life and what that new normal should look like for you, what you'd like it to look like, and what your rhythm would be. Getting into a habit. Like for me, one of the things that is so comforting is just when I get up in the morning, I know what I'm going to do. Like I get up and it's not like I wonder what I should do now. I get up and I do my tongue scraping, my teeth brushing, my oil pulling. I wash my face. I don't always have a shower right away. That depends a little bit on what I'm doing. I sit down and then I do my meditation, my pranayama, my gentle yoga. I do gentle stretches in the morning. And it's so easy because there's just no thought involved. It's just like, that's what I do. And so whatever you want to do, you don't have to follow any such schedule, but whatever you personally want to do for your own goals, that will be the thing that we're going to figure out for you in the last week. And then by the end of the month, you're going to have that solid daily routine. You're going to know how to rebalance yourself when you go out of balance, and whatever you need to be happy and healthy. And so the month is 375 euros for the entire month. This is a bargain. It's like 5 sessions with me, 5 consultations with me, but you're going to get me pretty much in your face almost every day. And if you join with a friend, you both get 50 euros off, which means that you'll each pay 325 euros instead of 375 euros. And if you're a student or you're unemployed, there's another rate. So it's 275 for you. Please email me and let me know what your situation is. And even we can discuss how to pay over time if that's better for you. And you can make a payment if you already know now that you want to jump in and do this. You can go ahead and make a payment to Inspiration ASBL. I didn't write it there, but it's ING Bank. That's the bank account, and you can please mention that it's the Ayurvedic home cleanse. If you prefer PayPal, I'll send you a PayPal invoice. That way you have a record of your payment, and I can send you the details via PayPal. And so if you're not 100% sure, or you want to think about it, there will be anyway a follow-up email tomorrow. I will include the link for this recording. And I will send the reminder of the payment details that I just flashed up there. You don't have to make a note of that right now, but you can if you're keen. And then a link if you're really if you have any questions or doubts, you can call me. There's a 15-minute discovery call that I have available on my website. It's always there for people to call if they have questions. It's often people who don't know me who just want to check out who this person is before they make an appointment with me. Or if you have any doubt about your not qualifications, that's the wrong word, but your whether you're good, in terms of your goals or your health or what it is that you'd like to get out of this, whether this is a good thing for you to do. I would so much rather have like 6 super devoted, really committed people to work with rather than like 15 or 20 sort of semi-interested people. So if you have any doubt, if you're not sure that this is really your thing, I would prefer to have that call first before you decide and then get in and then think actually halfway through, I really don't want to do all of this because it's about change. It's not easy to change. And there will be moments where you're doing things that go completely against your habits, like holding off, feeling real hunger, waiting to eat. Those are things that most of us don't really do anymore. So it's not necessarily going to be fun. Whether or not you join us, these are the things I encourage you to do. This, for those of you who will join, you definitely start this right now because we're all going to be doing this. as a minimum. So the 3 things I would encourage you to do that bring you genuine life-changing health benefits is to start drinking good quality water. If you don't already, ideally sip it all day long, drink it warm. I have a kind of a thermos cup. I have a thermos of 1.5 liters or 1.8 liters that I keep full all day long, drinking. Drink 30 minutes before a meal. For example, if you drink a cup of warm water 30 minutes before a meal, studies have shown that you digest much better, that you metabolize your food quicker, and you get more out of it. And definitely reduce other beverages. So if a lot of your day is spent drinking coffee or juice or smoothies or whatever, drop all of that and drink water. Drink water as a primary source of hydration. You'll see that your body will be very, very different. And then eat a light dinner. Eat a very little bit, and then as early as possible. I just this evening I ate at 5 o'clock. That's quite typical for me. And anytime up until 7 is great. If you can eat earlier, even better. So you can have a huge block of time then before the next day's breakfast. But just eat a light dinner as early as possible. One of the great things about being confined and having a curfew is that even if we do go out now, we're really limited. We have to be home by 10 in principle. So most people are serving dinner even at dinner parties by 7 o'clock, and I'm loving it because it's like the way we should be eating. Far better. And then go to bed at the same time every day. So ideally by 10. Now in Northern Europe, as the summer comes, the evening is so long. So, let's say 11 o'clock in summertime. Of course, that's part of the seasonal adjustment. But going to bed at the same time every day means that you roughly wake up at the same time every day. And I haven't used an alarm clock since my first child was born. So that's 1999. And the only time I would ever use an alarm clock is if I had to travel. That's it. And otherwise, I just know I'll get up sometime, early. I get up early, usually around anywhere between 6 and 7, depending on the season, depending on the time of year. And I don't have to hear that scary, stressful alarm. So go to bed at the same time. You'll be so glad you developed that habit. You will sleep better by sleeping earlier. So I will pause it all there and come back to whoever's still surviving, who's still there. And if you have any questions, this would be the time. So, hey, Komal, nice to see you. I didn't see you pop in. And Alexandra, nice to see you too. So if anybody has any questions, and jump in, and otherwise your questions will be answered perhaps in tomorrow's email. I don't know if any of you have had a chance to see. I know some of you actually participated in that fundraiser with the Ayurvedic webinar. And that's an overview of all the basics of Ayurveda. So if there's some questions about, meanings of things, that would be a good place to start. Right, well, nobody's jumping up and down with questions. Is anybody thinking of joining?
Hi, Susan. It's Alexandra. I don't know why my camera is suddenly refusing to work.
Okay.
I am very interested in joining. I am just wondering, since the program starts on the 12th of April, what is the time frame within which you would need a commitment from us?
So the very last day, I should have written that down. I'll write that tomorrow. I'll make a note. The very last day will be the 9th, Friday, the 9th of April. Because I have some things that once you've committed, I'm already going to send you like a shopping list and things that I want you to start to prepare, so that we're not doing that during the first week, but that you already go, pick up things like sesame oil and your butter to make ghee, or, the things that we'll need. It's not going to be expensive things. And actually a lot of it is going to be, it's just food that you might have anyway. It's what you have. If you do drink milk, I'm going to recommend that you buy raw milk, for example, and that you can find in bio stores. You can find it in farm, for example, in Brussels, a few other places here and there. So then you would have to go and tell them you want the raw milk, because it's usually not easily available on the shelf. Depends. So that depends on what you're going to be eating. So those kinds of things we can prepare in advance. And the 9th of April would be the absolute latest. So that's the Friday before. Kamal, you had trouble logging in. You're thinking about it. That's great. So you do a lot of yogasana. And so I don't know when you logged in, but the diet, a fasting diet, it's not that we're not eating food. There would be over the weekend of the full moon. There's that. The weekend of the full moon is what is it? The 28th, 29th, or something like that of the end of April, sorry, and so it's not usually going to interfere with work, for example, but also it depends on what your goals are. Some people will be fasting, really fasting, like not eating anything, just having water. I would say probably for 24 hours, not more. Others will be fasting with juice or just broth. Others will be fasting with a limited amount of food, for example. And that's a maximum of 3 days over that period of the full moon. Okay. And for the rest of the time, we'll be eating a simple diet, like a sattvic diet, a lot of khichdi. You're going to get to love khichdi. And a lot of really simple preparations. If you are not keen on having khichdi lots and lots of times, then you can add porridge or something like that. But it'll be very simple food. But we're going for maximum nourishment, maximum nutrition, and minimum volume. That's really what the goal is here. All right.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I think, I'd be keen to do it. I've grown up doing different types of fasting.
Yeah, for you, I don't think this would be a big challenge at all. Like the full moon fasting is quite typical in the Indian culture. That's where I learned it. And so it's just whatever you choose, however you want that fast to be. An Ayurvedic fast is usually meaning just reducing something. So it's not necessarily going without anything at all. Sometimes we think of fasting as starving, not eating anything. But it's just what you're reducing. And that fasting will include input, like social media and, whatever other intellectual inputs and noise and stimulation. So it'll be like this opportunity to kind of get a good book and just rest and learn the joys of recovering and rest. And especially for Ellen, as a young mother, I mean, I really wish I had somebody standing over me with a big stick making me rest more, because I really was so depleted. I was breastfeeding and running around like a crazy woman, and you get depleted and you need to rest more. You need to eat nourishing food and have much more structure. So, and there's a long-term price to pay if you don't. And that's the thing. That's where I hit the wall. So there we are. Anybody else? Who else is anybody thinking of joining?
I will.
You'll join, Girma? Wonderful.
Yes, I miss my trips to India.
I know.
I was thinking, last time it was 2-3 years ago. So.
Yeah. Fantastic. Yeah.
And I think I've convinced my friend Michaela. She might join as well.
Super. Okay. Well,
she's attending.
Yes.
So
I will try. Yes, indeed.
Oh, this is your friend. Okay. Hello, Michaela.
Hello. I'll try to put the video. Sorry, there is a bit of noise in my house. That's why.
Hi.
But nice meeting you.
And nice to meet you too.
I will try to discover this new world for me.
And this is it. If you do it like we're doing it as a group, that's already that energy of the group that supports. But if you do it as a friend, when you come together and you're like buddy, and you can really support each other, it's very motivating. It brings a lot of stimulus to your goal, whatever your goal is. It's like you're feeling you're hungry, and it's like You phone your friend and you say how hungry you are.
Yes.
We're going to learn to get comfortable. This is part of the training as well, as learning to get comfortable with hunger. You know,
Yes.
and when I say hunger, it's not even like the fridge is right down the hall. It's just that we're choosing to eat less, and we're choosing to structure our meals in such a way that we actually really feel hungry when we eat. It's such a radical premise, and that's how many generations before us used to live. You know, my parents' generation was probably the first generation where they would snack. You know, like certainly my generation was snacking all the time, but my parents' generation probably was the first one, and even they didn't really, you know, certainly not like today. And now today you have whole office, you know, places where people are keeping food for their employees all day long. And they're killing their employees. They're killing them because it's so bad. It creates high blood sugars and leads to diabetes, leads to all kinds of problems, insulin resistance, weight gain, brain fog. I mean, it's literally the worst thing you could do for your staff members. So, okay, yeah. And so I will do this again if this is a success, if it seems to be a good thing to do. I will do this again in the fall, because the two periods to do these cleanses are in the spring and in the fall. And so that period would be like late September. I always choose moons to work with when I can. So that would be a new moon in September going into October. That's a really good time to cleanse as well. And it's different because then we're doing something different. Then we're reducing heat in the body and we're building up for the winter. Whereas right now, what we're doing is reducing kapha, what we've built up over the winter, all the accumulation over the winter, the excess water, the excess fat, the excess, winter. And that's what we're going to be shedding. And that's what spring offers us. You know, if you look around, you've got, when we see the things that come up, you have rucola, you know, the roquette, and you have lots of spinach, and you have asparagus and artichokes, and all these things are spring things. They're the spring natural seasonal foods that reduce, they pull out the excess. And so you don't have like heavy foods at this time of the year. It's not the time to eat pasta, for example. It's not the time to like fill up on potatoes and things. That's winter food. And so when we recognize those changes, the simple things that we need to change, it's also really easy to regulate yourself. You know, as you're going from one thing to another, it's like, well, what actually is there available to eat that I don't have to get from 1,000 kilometers away, or that I don't have in storage all like 6 months of the year? Like apples or fruit that comes picked off the trees in October, November, and is still being sold now. So it's a manner of eating, and it doesn't have to be always and forever. It's that, let's say 80% of the time you're just doing this, and then you'll just find that your health is just a given. And then the other 20% of the time you can have fun. You can say, okay, fine, I go out at 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock and have pizza. It's no big deal. And I know how to rebalance myself the next day. I might skip breakfast, or I might eat something different the following day because I'm now rebalancing from the previous day.
Susan, can I ask you something? Do you think we will have enough energy for a busy office day during the cleanse? Because in India, I remember I was very, very tired. I remember.
Yeah, but we're not doing, you did Panchakarma.
Yeah.
We're not doing a full Panchakarma. And so this is really designed to actually allow you to keep kind of going about your day. We're restricting food a lot. But what I said earlier, that restriction paradoxically gives you more energy, because the energy that your body is constantly like pulling in to try and digest your food when there's too much food going in, that energy is now used for other things. That energy is used for thinking. It's used for firing up your muscles. It's used for circulating your blood. And you have more energy available for the rest of you. And so this is what I was aiming at when I was saying some people might find psychologically that it's very frightening, even the idea of fasting or the idea of cutting back, because we think that we're getting our energy from our food. And of course, to a certain extent we do, but the energy is already in us. We're trying to free it up. So we're giving ourselves just enough extra energy to keep moving forward, without depleting or running ourselves down. But we're not going to fill ourselves so much that we're actually bogging ourselves down. So we're actually creating a kind of an open space for the energy to flow more freely. So you will have more clarity. Usually there's a hump, 2-3 days, and you're not feeling great. It's like, I wish I could have that smoothie or that chocolate or whatever the thing is, because it's new and it's different. But once you get over that, then you're really fine. And you're eating nourishing food, especially in the first week to 10 days. You're not restricting anything. You're not restricting calories. We're just restricting the time that we eat. So we're limiting the meal times and putting them in a specific time zone, let's say, so that you can maximize time without eating. So you'll still get the nourishment that you need. And then gradually that tapers off. So we're eating less and less and less till we get to 1 meal a day and then liquid fasting. It could be like 1 meal of khichdi and then just juice, for example, for dinner, or soup, light broth or something like that for dinner. Depending on what you might need, you may not need anything at all. We just eat too much. And so that it's just retraining the diet, just retraining our stomach for better digestion. Today, because I was busy, I ordered Lebanese food. I love Lebanese food. So I ordered Lebanese food. And the portion that came, I always do this, the portion that came, I get it at lunch because it's so much food that I have lunch and dinner. And it's enough. It's filling. It's super filling for both lunch and dinner. And that's supposed to be one portion. So our portions are completely out of whack. And our body can't, digest. And then if we go to an actual restaurant, remember those days that you go to a restaurant and you eat that, and it's like you don't want to leave all that food on your plate. Many of us have been raised with that idea that you must clean your plate. So we're going to look at all kinds of messages from childhood as well. Were you told that you had to eat everything on your plate? And that message remains. And so there's this kind of unconscious guilt complex around eating or, not eating or whatever. So we just have to retrain some of those things. We just have to question them, look at them differently. So I can be sure you will be able to, we'll go, day by day tweaking, just as we do when you go to an Ayurvedic clinic, you tweak regularly. And you find, okay, thanks, Kalina. And you find that you have to see day by day what's possible for you, and you can always scale it back or add something in. It's a process. It's not fixed. This is why we're working towards each individual goal rather than doing things exactly across the board as everybody's doing the same thing. So there's a foundation that everybody follows, but then each individual will be doing something slightly different. All right. So if there are no more questions, then I think we can leave it there. And I will be in touch again tomorrow with this recording. If you want to send it to anybody else, just forward tomorrow's email to somebody if you think they might want to see this. And I do hope you can join. I hope you can hang out for a month and see what can change. Could be very interesting. We'll discover together what's going to change. So thanks, everybody. Okay, good night.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night. Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Merci, Madeleine.